Hi, so we were in the middle of filming for the elixirs class that we're working on, Extraordinary Elixirs, and I went out into the garden and I saw that the pokeberries are ripe. And when the pokeberries are ripe, it's time to make pokeberry succus, right? That's just one of those things that can't wait. So here is a cluster of ripe pokeberries, soft and squishy, right? And a Phytolacca americana is the plant we're talking about. Some people may have heard of poke root because I think today it's the more commonly used part of the plant, but the berries are very special. They have an interesting medicine that the root doesn't have. So pokeberries, what you have to watch out for as far as toxicity is concerned is the seeds. The seeds contain a toxin. It's called pokeweed antiviral protein, right? And it actually can kill you. So we don't want the seeds. And by the way, some people hear that poke is antiviral because they've heard something about this toxin in the seeds, but that's in vitro in lab studies. It actually kills HIV viruses really well, but it's poisonous and it doesn't work inside the human body. So be careful, interpreting things that say antiviral. Another safety thing with pokeberry is make sure you're not confusing the little black wild cherries, right, which is Prunus virginiana, also known as chokecherry, because the clusters look similar, but the berries are very different, right? The berries are unique. They have 10 little black seeds inside. A little hard to see on these, but they have little tiny hair-like projections coming out of the bottom, and there's 10 of them if there are 10 seeds inside, and they correspond with the seeds. So that's a very unique identifier. And also, chokecherry is a tree, and pokeweed is a hardy herbaceous perennial with like electrical magenta stout stems. that's what I call that color, So here's basically inflorescence that we've picked the berries off of, and you can see these cute little flower-like receptacles that hold the berries onto it. Right, that's very distinctive. Chokecherry doesn't look anything like that. And wild grapes don't look anything like that. And elderberries don't look anything like that either. I've heard of people confusing all of those. And these are the unripe berries, right? So they're green, and then they start turning kind of purplish brown, and then they get so dark purple magenta that they look black when they're ripe, okay? So you may have heard that, this plant is poisonous. You have to remember toxicity is a function of dosage, right? So if you know which part to use and which part not to use and how much to use, then you avoid potential toxicity, okay? So the seeds here is, so what we're doing is we're making a traditional succus, which is we're tincturing the juice, right, of the berries. So it helps when they're really ripe because they're very soft and squishy. But this is the seeds from a batch that we did yesterday, right? So you can see they're little tiny black things, right? And there's an average of 10 of them in every berry, but I did a bit of an experiment in school. I wrote a thesis on poke, and I counted a lot of seeds out of a lot of berries, and the range was 8 to 13, but the vast majority of them have 10. And that's what the old-fashioned name actually was, Phytolacca decandra, right? Deca is 10, so it's talking about the 10 seeds. But this is what's left over after you mush the berries and wash them down with your menstruum or your solvent system. So this is a bunch of seeds that are going to go back into the earth, right? And this is just a little bit of the juice. You see that dark, rich color? Look at that. That's one of the main things we want to get out of pokeberries. Right? That is beetalain alkaloids. Beetalain alkaloids are non-toxic alkaloid that, same thing that makes beets that purpley red beet color, right? It's a good source of them. Or amaranth flowers or the leaves underneath, you see a color similar to this. Or inside prickly pear cactus fruits, you'll see them when they're that beautiful sort of purpley magenta color. So that's a beneficial, very powerful antioxidant, anti-inflammatory compound that discourages abnormal cell growth, right? So that's a good part of the pokeberry. So we leave the seeds behind. We're after the juice and the skins. And if you look here, the skins, right? Oh, that's an interesting double one. Look at that. The skins are shiny and just so dark magenta they're black. But when you squish it, you get that color, right? So that's the betyl-AN alkaloids. You're actually seeing them emanate that beautiful, beautiful color, right? Also, you might read somewhere that's like, oh, if you get it on your skin, it'll cause terrible dermatitis. That applies to the root. The root is a different medicine. It's actually, you know, more potentially toxic, right? Unless you know how to use it right. So this is a low-dose herb. It was very highly thought of by traditional botanical physicians and pharmacists in the 17 and the 1800s. And it is an indigenous North American herb too. So it flourishes in the southern Appalachians and in the Ozarks and even in eastern Kansas. But when you hit that dry line, it usually doesn't grow. So we really had to coax it to grow out here in Colorado by putting it under shade cloth and giving it plenty of water and some really rich soil. And now we have a couple of beautiful bushes. They're just making more berries than we can use, which is an excellent problem to have. So this is how we are going to make a fresh berry succus. So succus means, again, you tincture the juice and it ends up being low percentage ethanol, right? Because you just need enough to preserve. And by the way, the betyl-AN alkaloids are water soluble, right? Most alkaloids are not, but these are. So we don't need a lot of ethanol to get them out. So what we did a few calculations, right? So we weighed our berries and we recorded the weight with our lovely scale here. And then we estimated how much of those berries is the seed weight, right? And we figured maybe about 15%. So 15% of the weight of a berry, a big fat juicy berry, is maybe those 10 little seeds inside, which we're leaving behind. So we subtracted that out of the weight. And then we estimated how juicy are they, basically, what's the water content? And kind of an average water content for berries is around 90%, right? So you got to think, oh, so all that water in there is going to add itself to the menstruum, right? So we got the weight of the berries, we estimated the weight of the seeds and the water content pretty closely based on experience. And then we have our fresh herb hydroethanolic extraction calculator over here that does the hard work for us. So we entered the weight of the berries minus the weight of the seeds and our estimated water content. And we entered our desired extraction ratio, which is 1 to 2, which is kind of the standard if you're making a tincture or hydroethanolic extract with fresh plant material, right? So we chose 1 to 2, and we entered our 30%, which is how much ethanol we want to end up with. And we waved the magic wand, and we pushed the magic button, and it told us how to make our menstruum, or our solvent system. It's called a solvent system because it has 2 solvents, right? So ethanol and water. In other words, hydroethanolic, right, is the menstruum that you tincture with. And our calculator tells us that we needed to put 156.9 milliliters of 95% ethanol in our graduated cylinder here. And then we needed to add 185.7 milliliters of water. And then the rest of the water, to make it turn out to be 30% in the end, is coming out of the berries, right? So we got that all set up. We mixed our menstruum together. We used, you know, different sizes to get exactly right. So that's what the little one is for. And so now it's time to squish the berries. So this is how, look at those beauties. Oh, I love these things so much. By the way, when I was doing my experiments with this back in the day, I decided that I would see how many berries I could eat while spitting out every single seed and counting the seeds before something funny started happening. I wanted to, like, I'm pretty good at like picking up the toxicity signals. So I actually got up to 25 pokeberries minus all the seeds and carefully, meditatively sitting on them, 2, 1, 2, 2, right? And to get all of them out, and I recorded all that data. And I got up to 25 berries, and what happened was my mouth was stinging, right? But that was the only adverse effect. And the reason my mouth was stinging is because these berries also contain saponins or saponins, right? And those are like soap. So it's almost like if you put dish soap in your mouth or something, that's going to be icky and sting. And if you got way too much of it, it would go down and be like swallowing dish soap. It would disturb the, you know, the velvety absorptive lining of your intestines, and you would get a terrible crampy case of unhappy diarrhea from it, right? But spitting out the seeds, right? 25, but spitting out the seeds. And that was an experimentally high dose. If I want to take them for their anti-inflammatory and antioxidant value, usually I'll do 3 to 5 berries, spit out all the seeds in a day. Right, but that was in the name of science. I shall eat 25 at once. That was cool. It was very interesting. Okay, so toxicity is a matter of dosage, right? Right. All right, so they're all going in here, and this is why you do it when they're super ripe, and when we take our opportunity. I'm going to spatulate with the magic unicorn spatula. The magic unicorn spatula is too soft. Look at that. We'll need to use something else. I'll grab a wooden spoon. That'll work better. That was unexpected. So I was like, let's get a really soft spatula, right? This frame thing, by the way, is part of a set that has a conical strainer, and you get a thing called a muddler, and it's for like squishing berries, basically. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to smash them when you have a stout wooden spoon. Let me move this over. And this is a process that takes a little time, you know. You want to get them all broken open because you want to release as much juice as possible. So here's something interesting. Traditionally, this medicine was used by elder herbalists in the Appalachians. And one of their traditions, this is pretty cool, is they would hang these clusters up to dry, right? So you'd go in a cabin and there'd be a few of these hanging up. And what they did was they dried the berries and they used them kind of like a pill, right? They would swallow one whole, not crunch open the seeds, but just swallow it whole. The seeds would pass through harmlessly, and they said that would keep the rheumatism away, right? So rheumatism is the word that they use for any sort of aching joints, or maybe even like aching other connective tissue body parts, any sort of physical soreness. And that was kind of an old standard that I heard quite a few times when I lived there. Yeah, but just to be on the safe side now, I removed the seeds, right? Might be erring on the side of caution a little bit. What you don't want to do is crunch them open. There is one recorded case from history of someone who sadly mistook pokeberries for wild grapes. They picked a bunch of them. They put them in a blender to make grape juice, and they drank a large glass of it, and they did not survive, right? So that's an extremely high dose with the seeds. Some of the seeds probably cracked open from the blender, okay? That's the one case that I was able to find of, somebody who took it way too far there. If you look randomly on the internet, you will find people repeating the error that pokeberries are out to kill you, right? Because, they might not have had a lot of actual details about the potential toxicity or how to prepare them safely to avoid having toxicity appear, right? So this is a low-dose botanical. It's a bit for more advanced herbalists, maybe not for the beginner. You kind of have to know how to dose it right. But it's a wonderful alterative, right? Which means it helps steadily and profoundly, but gently help the body to reset long-term imbalances. So a lot of times people will use it as part of an alterative formula. And one time I saw an old bottle of Pokeberry Succus at Michael Moore's place, and it was beautiful. It was from, somewhere in the early 1900s, and on the label it said deobstruent, which is a great archaic word, which means helps to clear obstructions, basically. So sometimes they would use it to open up the bowels, just exactly the right dose. So you don't want to overdo it with this medicine, but you don't need to be afraid of it, right? You just know how to use it properly. You have to remember that the most toxic part is the seeds, okay? So, and you don't want to use unripe ones either. You want to get them when they're really squishy, right? All right, so you can see the beautiful juice accumulating down there, right? You see that? It's a little foamy. So the next thing you do is you want to take your menstruum and wash the seeds with it, right? And that way you get a lot more juice out of your berries. And the seeds, as I'm doing this, I haven't broken any seeds open, but I've ground up a lot of the skin of the berries as well, right? So that's kind of a thing you want to do. And then we gently drizzle the menstruum over. Wow, the color, there's nothing like it. Kind of stir and drizzle and stir and work that menstruum or that solvent system through that mushed up berry patty. What do you call that? A mushed up collection of pokeberries in here. Sometimes, people will ask me, can I dye fabric with that? Because, wow. And I don't have experience with fabric dyeing, but I've heard from a lot of places, historical and modern, that it's really hard to fix the color. I have tried it just, casually, and what happens is it just kind of starts turning brown and ends up being a nice brown color, but it doesn't retain that electrified magenta hue. That would be cool if somebody could figure that one out. Okay, so you see how we're getting a lot more of that beautiful colored juice out by doing this, right? And it might be a little hard to see on the video, but I can see now mostly seeds, like most of the, oops, there's one that got away. Most of the juice and the skins have gone through. So we'll do it a little more. All right. You may have heard of poke root as being a lymphagogue or something that helps to move lymph and resolve lymphatic swellings. For example, like with fibrocystic breast conditions. So the berries also have some of that lymph moving property, and they also have immunostimulant properties, right? And part of that is based on the beta-lactam alkaloids. And the anti-inflammatory action is both beta-lactam alkaloids and saponins. So the right amount of saponins tends to be anti-inflammatory, right? So that's pretty cool. I'm sure there's a lot of other interesting constituents in there too, but those are the two that I know the most about, that have been studied the most. Okay, our final rinse. Here it goes. There, beautiful. Every last drop. So now, through the magical powers of math and Excel calculators, we have, and I'm just trying to press the rest of the liquid out here now. We have beautiful pokeberry succus, or low-ethanol tincture. That's the definition of a succus. You may have heard of a succus in the context of calendula. That's one of the popular traditional preparations of calendula, is to make a succus of the flowers. All right. Okay. I think we've got it. There we go. More poke seeds. So many. So there, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? It's one of the most beautiful botanical things you can make. So just to be double extra safe, we're gonna pour that through another strainer in case a few seeds got away, because sometimes that happens. So we're gonna pour it through here to catch any stray seeds. See if we got any. Ooh. I'm seeing a few berry skin fragments, but I don't see any seeds, so we did good with that one. Right, we'll lose a little bit here, but that's okay. We'll rinse it all out and we'll go back to the earth. And then we have a properly labeled bottle, ever so important, especially when you're working with low dose herbs, right? So pokeberry succus, And it says no seeds, Phytolacca americana, and we have the date on there. And actually this is an improperly labeled bottle because it says 1:1 volume to volume, and that was another way we made it. So we're gonna have to change that. And we're gonna put 1:2, 30% on this one. That's okay, labels are cheap. Our friend the funnel, always good to have a funnel. And Pokeberry Succus, look at it. Gorgeous. How can you be so beautiful? My lovely pokeweed. My lovely pokeweed. Look at that, how good are we? Right in the bottle. That's what we converted milliliters to ounces. There we go. So that'll last quite a few people quite a long time, because the dose of this Succus is about equivalent to the dose of the berries. So 1 drop, not dropper full, drop, 1 drop, 1 to 5 drops is a dose. And you would take that anywhere between, depending on, you know, what you're doing, depending on your condition or whether you're formulating with it or everything, maybe up to 4 times a day. That's pretty high end, right? 5 drops, 4 times a day is about the high end of the dose range, except for special circumstances. Okay, so we did it. We made Pokeberry Succus. Here's the one we made yesterday. I like to keep it in the brown bottle to keep the light off it, because the light will degrade a lot of phytochemicals, including pigmented ones. So we're gonna have to go share this with our new local apothecary in Paonia. And we put some, just for fun, we squirted some into vinegar to see if it would change color like anthocyanins do. Anthocyanins are kind of flavonoid. Most purple things have anthocyanins. So the beta-lactam alkaloids are the exception. They're like the other purplish thing. And I was like, what will happen if we squirt this into vinegar? And it did a really funny dance in there, but it didn't really change color that much. So that was interesting. All right, so Phytolacca americana pokeberries, formerly known as pigeon berries, or skokum, or pokum, or there's a lot of different names for this one. But now you know how to safely extract them and safely dose them, low dose botanical. And yeah, I guess we'll clean up our gorgeous pokeberry mess and get back to making a class about elixirs. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this video, and we'll put a little more information in the text that goes with it. See you next time.